Hi, and thank you for giving your time to Unlimited Seating. I'm your host, Sanila Samuel. Every episode, we bring to you a role model who shares her journey in an easy flowing, candid conversation. We talk about early childhood influences, career choices, and how they've navigated through biases and life in general to get to where they are at today. Through these conversations, Unlimited Seating aims to inspire, educate, and build a community that promotes and celebrates inclusion and diversity in a world where female leaders are still an exception and not the norm. Hey, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unlimited Seating. It's been a while, but I'm so happy to be back and with my first guest, Sudha Jamthe. Let me tell you a bit about Sudha. Sudha Jamthe is a technology futurist, author of 7 books, an educator, an independent researcher with 25 plus years of entrepreneurial and operational experience in the technology industry. She builds online learning communities at Weeklywed and IoTWomen and Global South in AI at NeurIPS conference. Her aspiration is a limitless world where AI can work ethically for all of us. In her spare time, Sudha enjoys chasing self-driving cars and hugging robots. She can be reached at sudhajamthe.com. Sudha, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us at Unlimited Seating today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Likewise. And I'm going to jump right into it, Sudha, because I just love your profile first. Can, can you share a little bit, get us started about what you do, why you do it, what motivates you? It's a very different profile from many of my other guests at Unlimited Seating.
That's true. And anybody who sees my profile would say I do many things, which is kind of my method to the madness. I'm a technology futurist. I'm based out of Silicon Valley. And I've had 5 or 7 different careers in my life, I would say. And the bulk of my career has been in technology industry. I started from being a software engineer. And then I wanted to do a startup, so I eventually ended up doing a startup. That's the entrepreneurial part in my resume that you see. But I love learning constantly. What I do is, having worked for a couple of decades in technology industry, built out organizations from scratch for innovation, for social, for mobile, new technologies. I realize I like new technologies. I get very excited. That's why I chase the robots and self-driving cars. But my operational experience has taught me that there are some technologies that are here to stay, and many of them come and go in waves. And so I hold myself accountable to see, when I get excited about a technology, what are the business drivers, what are the market drivers, what is the technology really doing, and then use my experience to figure out my own thought around it. And I write, I talk, I teach. And women tend to be limiting themselves unless they know 100% of something. And so I like to make sure that there are more women brought in to learn the latest new technology. So I like to demystify the latest. So my latest book is on Gen AI. I like to demystify it. I like to have opinion pieces on what's happening. I teach this in multiple different universities. I teach at Stanford Continuing Studies. I teach at Barcelona Technology School. I teach at Elizabeth School of Design. I teach product managers, business managers, lawyers, designers, linguists, so that I want to bring variety of different roles to build AI in a very equitable, inclusive way. So in short, I'm a technology futurist. I'm always looking at new technology, but I teach, I write, I talk, but it's all towards the same topic.
Wow, I love it. I just love the goals that you have. And it's all stems from your love for learning, love for technology, and you're kind of sharing that with everybody and bringing more people into your space. So we're probably going to go back then to the start of your career, just trying to understand growing up, probably who were your role models and how did that lead into your career choices?
So I come from India. And when I wanted to do computer science, it was a very nascent new field. And my physics teacher said that this is going to grow and you're good at physics and I think you should do this. And I got in. And I got very excited about computers. And in my entire family, there were no engineers. And they were all accountants or CP. And they were like, this is this new field. Why do you want to do this? And I was kind of the first person in my family to kind of go do that. And that helped me shape my own career, shape my identity. And so once I landed in a job and then my career took off, I deliberately shaped my career to where I want to go. I've changed my career multiple times. So from being an engineer, I got excited about the web and I wanted to go be an entrepreneur. And there were several people who were entrepreneurs who were my role models. They were mentors and advisors. And they were all people who had achieved. So one of the things I like to do is I can never give back to the same people because they were millionaires, billionaires, or at least from my perspective, they're way above me at that point. So I feel like I need to give back, like it's like paying forward, right? That's what I'm doing in what I'm doing. And then around 8 years back, I left my corporate job and decided to go off and write a book, and started with one book and then it became like 7 books. And I spoke to several people, and in that there are 2 role models. One is Brian Solis, writes brilliantly, and I wanted to have like a platform like him. And the other person is Marsha Collier, is a millionaire who's written 30 plus books. And she's a professional writer, as an author, published author. And so I asked advice from my publisher, my friends who had published, and Marsha Collier's advice stuck with me. She said, if you have something to tell the world that you think it'll help somebody, go write. Don't write it for money. And just because you think you're helping somebody, don't put it out for free, because if you put it out for free, people will not respect your time or your advice. And so it was kind of a very grounded advice. So I look up to Marsha on the author side of things. So like that, I've been, Susanna Raj, who's an AI ethicist, I work with her and we found a nonprofit called Global South in AI, which is one of my recent projects. And she inspired me about being an AI researcher and to educate and bring more people into AI research from global South countries. So I've had various different role models. And then as I'm teaching adults, professional adults, my students really are my role models. My students are innovators and they love latest new technologies. And so I'm not just teaching them, I'm inspiring them to innovate, to bring their experience from what I'm teaching them. So I have a list of students who are my role models in various different aspects of what I do.
That's really interesting, Sudha, because like you said, you evolved and done a lot of different things from, you started out as a software engineer. You said you're an extrovert as well. So it looks like you do go seek people who can provide that guidance, a bit of, but also that inspiration,
Yeah.
right? And as you've done these different pivots, maybe can you give a bit of advice on how did you go about? So you go from software engineering, transition over to the web, and at some point you then transition into AI, which is the space that you are really big time into right now. When you get into a new space, give us some tips on how do you go about connecting with people.
Okay. So the first thing is I get very excited. I'm very driven by passion. And so first, when I wanted to write a book, when I was still in my corporate job, I was heading mobile analytics at eBay. It was a big org. I was responsible for $24 billion, a lot of responsibility. And you think like your world is your company, right? And then I wanted to get out and go do this. So I started talking to people to just understand what this book writing looks like. What should I write? Should it be an ebook? And one of the advice I got was just write a lot, read a lot so that you become a good writer, and write various topics and see what. At that point, since I was heading mobile, this Internet of Things, or how everything is connected to the internet, was fascinating as one of the things that eBay was looking at, and it was coming under my org. So I got very fascinated, and I was thinking there are people like me who have been very busy with corporate jobs who don't know this IoT or Internet of Things. Let me demystify that. So it was a very simple goal. And so the way I ended up, I took a sabbatical of a couple months and I said, I'll write this book and go back. And I started to go learn what is this IoT, went and attended meetups, tried to go back to my engineering roots to build IoT. And then as I interacted with more people, I realized this is much bigger than my view in Silicon Valley. So I started a YouTube channel where I started interviewing people on IoT. So as part of the interviewing process, I had to prepare for it. So eventually what happened was I had enough content. I said, you know what I know to do is I know to put things out on the web and get feedback. So I'm going to put a Kindle book, which is like an introductory book. And I went to LinkedIn and said, this is what the chapters of this book, this is the rest I'm planning. Tell me if this is useful for you. People came to me and said, how about this? How about that? Why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about how this can actually be applied in industry? Who's doing it? And that helped me to kind of guide my IoT channel on YouTube. And I ended up building case studies. When I had enough case studies, I said, that's the book I'm going to build, going to publish. So my printed book became one about real applications in industry, real challenges, and where to innovate. And then Stanford called me and said, we don't have a book on a topic on this. Can you come teach this at continuing studies? And I went and did that. And then as I was continuing with, I moved to autonomous vehicle because that's a connected device. A car is a connected device. So that fascinated me. So that became my next topic, next book, next course, and kind of my next journey. And then since I had worked with analytics and data, I realized everything is about data. The real value is from data. So I kind of meandered towards that. And that led me to AI. And then that led me to Gen AI. So that's where I am. So, and today I'm known as, one of the top industry experts on Gen AI, because I've written a book on that. I've taught a Stanford course on that. And I have opinions and publish things and do, guide people to career pivot to Gen AI. So I'm learning, teaching, learning, and getting feedback. Yeah.
Yeah. It's stemming from your interest and passion, and you're trying to first learn for yourself, and that's then you're finding the means to do it, and that's kind of putting you're kind of building out your network as well through the process.
Yeah. But I also put things out, like when I write a piece, I write an opinion. As adults, how we learn any new topic is we already have experience from whatever we've learned, whatever our occasion, right? From our life experience. Then when something new is told to us, we try to make sense of it relative to what we already know when we make that connection. So what I do is when I'm learning something, I would say, this looks like what happened with the web, or this looks like what happened with mobile, or can this be applied in e-commerce? And I would have an opinion about it. So when I looked at IoT and Alexa had just launched, and I said, if I was a product manager of Alexa, how would I build it? Why did they build it this way? And then I started writing about it. And I used to do only on LinkedIn, and I now write guest posts everywhere. And then I would say, this is what I'm thinking. Are you working in this field? Do you agree? And I want people to disagree with me. I want people to come and tell me stuff that they're doing. And I'm so grateful for my community, right, to come and talk to me and say, no, this is not what we do in this industry. Then I would engage in a conversation on that. Or I would go back to the drawing board and say, this is my understanding from e-commerce, and this seems different. Or this is my understanding from this geography, and they're doing it differently. What is different? And I try to understand. And then I would come back. So I feel like I'm accountable to people, especially my community on LinkedIn, right? I'm accountable to them to be authentic, to come back and close the loop. And that's a continued conversation we are having forever, I would say.
That brings me to a very important topic. So you did say that, you take inputs from people and you use that to improve and continually better what you're working on. I want to take you to a topic of feedback, right? We all give feedback, we all get feedback, but the way everyone responds to feedback, it's very personal and it's very different, especially as somebody who's working in a very entrepreneurial fashion, right? How do you go about getting that feedback? What does it mean to you? And how then do you use it because it's not a typical corporate setting, right? Where we have a feedback process and a loop, and I'll come back next year and somebody will tell me, you've taken the feedback. So what does feedback mean for you, and how have you incorporated that in your very different way of working?
So I think feedback is a gift. If somebody cares enough to tell you good or bad things, right, and give you feedback, it's a gift. And that's my attitude about feedback always.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do with it is left to us, right? So let me give you, since I worked for many years in corporate and now I'm on my own especially as an educator, let me tell you two aspects of it. One is, as I just mentioned, when I post things on LinkedIn, I write things and people come back and give me feedback. I say, that's a gift. I would take that in perspective. And then I would process that and say, where are my gaps of knowledge? Did I bring this perspective because I don't have this lived experience of this other person? And I kind of adapt my content. I adapt my books, my courses, and things like that. So that there, it's very straightforward. It's a gift when somebody tells me something, right? And then if they are telling me they love my work, or if they tell me that this is not how it is done in my world, I am not affected in a very personal way because it's all learning for me, right? And when you are in a corporate job, there is a systematic process, right? I've had feedback similarly from my very good sponsors and mentors internally in my job who helped me grow, right? Again, you can take that as a gift, but what you do with it, how much you change your identity or you judge yourself is left to you. And when we get started, we don't know the difference. If somebody tells us something that you don't know, you're doing it wrong, we assume they're right, they know better. One of my observation in corporate is women get a lot of feedback. Also, women seek a lot of feedback. So I've seen many women who would ask for feedback of their bosses, and well-meaning bosses would give feedback and so that they can improve and grow, and they will help them grow, right? So what happens is, especially when women hit the ceiling and the managers are not able to help them, they would say, but you know what, you are very process oriented, you need to do this. You know what, you're focused on this, you need to you're a specialist, you need to be a generalist. And they will move into different roles and they will give them things. So it's very important, I would say, to receive the feedback because they are caring enough to tell you. It's a gift. But then how you process it and you say, okay, they're saying this about me. Is this true about me? Maybe it is. Now, do I want to change? And is it going to help me towards my goal? And I think that's how we should process feedback, especially in a corporate setting. I think that's very critical. Right? So yeah, that's
I
my.
think that's a really important point. To just don't take the feedback just at face value, question it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that I feel women tend to anyway be tougher with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So again, take the feedback. And I like what you said. Do I need to change? And because does this help me with where I'm trying to get to, right? And
Yeah.
if it's not helping you to where you want to get to, then it's okay.
Yeah.
Do your thing.
You have to set a goal for yourself, which is bigger than just your job. So if you're going for your job and you're saying, I want a promotion, and your boss says, okay, you need to do these 3 things, you have to hold your boss accountable and say, if I come and show you that I've got these 3, are you going to give me a promotion? Now help me figure out how I fill in these gaps. What should I do? Right? And sometimes people mean well. Most of the time people mean well and they'll tell you things, right? But they might not be able to help you once you execute on that gap. They might not be able to help you to get to that next level, to get to that path in your career. So you need to have a goal that's bigger than one job, one role, one place. You need to have it for yourself, saying, I'm going to be here in 5 years from now or 2 years from now or something like that, right? And I think that's important. So you're accountable only to yourself.
I love that.
That's
And I love what you said about you being in the flow, and you know what keeps you in the flow, right? Like doing a number of different things that for you meet your are to do with your passion, and you're also helping others, right? And that I think that's linked to the feedback piece as well. Like know what keeps you in the flow. And if you're being told something that you think is going to disrupt your flow, then that's probably something you shouldn't be pursuing. So
and I think all of us at some gut level, right? When I think Steve Jobs said this, so I'm just paraphrasing this. Like if you're doing something and you don't feel happy about it, don't feel fulfilled about it. If it's 1 day, 2 days, it's okay. If it goes on for a few days and you feel restless about, you're not happy, then you need to stop and evaluate, what am I doing? How am I doing? And you're running between multiple things and you're kind of, not giving enough attention, and you feel like you're not an expert on wherever you want to go. You kind of judge yourself in so many ways, right? You stop and say, okay, is this job, is this environment not working for me? Am I not able to give it all I can? Do I need to do something different, or do I need to do something totally different? So I think we know that at the end of the day, when we go to bed, we know if the day was good or bad.
that's right.
Yeah.
I would also then take you to the corporate career and then starting out almost, it's almost like a starting out, right, on your own. There are something that I always learn from my guests a lot is it's great when things are going well, right? When you're in the flow, all good, you can keep going and keep doing better. But can you share a time when things were really not going so great for you, right? Maybe it was a low point either corporate wise or, as you were figuring out, hey, let me start a new initiative. Can you share a low point? How did you maybe get yourself out of it?
Okay. I think I'm sure all of us, have had like 25 plus years career. So I have like many times in my career. I'm just trying to think what is relevant for this audience. So one thing I would say is I moved from software engineering to the web, and then I went and did an MBA because I thought I was, so when I tried to move from software engineer to the business side, I got pushback. And I did, and so I thought, okay, I was not a business person. I was not able to communicate and articulate this. And so I need to get an MBA. So I went and did an MBA. And then I ended up with the right job, and I was growing in my corporate job, and I was having fun. Things were going fine. And then I decided to do a startup, and I wanted to do a startup for a while. I was itching to do that. And so I left everything and went and did a startup. Again, it was a starting point. I had to learn, and I had my ups and downs. I raised my first million in 40 days. That's kind of my claim to fame. I was in Boston. I was, this was like mobile middleware play, creating the App Store technology so many decades back, before iPhone, Android, and stuff. And so I had to wind down everything with the dot-com bust. And then I decided that, okay, I'll go back to a job. And at that point, I moved from Boston to California because bulk of my investors were in California, and I saw tech industry was kind of booming there. So when I moved here, one of my thought process was I need to decide whether I'm going to go back into a startup mode or whether I'm going to go into corporate, because those are the two things I know. So all these years of experience I had and the success I had in corporate, I never thought that would be diluted or questioned when I go back into the job market. And then what happened is at the end of my startup, I ended up having a baby. So I took a little break, and then I came back, right? And I was very deliberate about what I was doing. I went hands-on, and whatever the latest was Web 2.0, and I kind of studied that and played with things and stuff. I was ready, right? And so I was eligible, I was ready, up my resume, moved to West Coast. And then when I applied for a job, the big companies won't call me. And one of my friends eventually said, all your resume shows East Coast companies, and they're not showing West Coast companies. And if you're in Google, they're looking for people from Yahoo at that point, and vice versa. I was very shocked, right? And so that was the first thing. And I decided to go off and build a bunch of meetups and keep my energy and learning. So social was picking up. I was very excited about social media, not like social media today, but when it was opening up as a platform, you could build apps on it and stuff. And so I ended up running the Facebook meetup for Bay Area, started the Pinterest meetup, Google Plus meetup, Twitter meetup, and used to run a bunch of hackathons. I was expensing all my energy on this, right? But I was positive out for the world, but internally I was like, why am I not getting a job? Why am I not accepting everything I've done? I'm stuck. What do I do now, right? And what happened was, since I ran developer meetups and I came from product management, PayPal called me and said, okay, we want to launch PayPal as a platform for developers, and you bring the right mix of experience. Would you come consult for us? So I ended up going to PayPal as a consulting person. And then they said, okay, we'll give you a job full time. You want to switch? And I was ready. And I loved the team. They are amazing people, very entrepreneurial energy inside, but very big company, right? And eventually I took the job with PayPal, and then PayPal and eBay were at one. So I moved to eBay side. I stayed with them, till I decided to go off on my own, like 8 years back. But what happened is when I was negotiating for moving to full time, they were like, okay, what is your salary? And I was paid a lot of money as a consultant because it was an hourly rate. And so they said, oh, it won't be that much. I said, okay, it makes sense. And I had learned that about 2/3 of it was what they would give for a full-time salary. And so I had the math on that. That number matched close to what I was paid when I was a corporate director in a big company before my startup. Right. So I was asking for that amount. And now I think in California, it's not legal to ask what your previous salary is. Because women run into this all the time, right? And so that time it was not. So they asked me, and they said, oh, that's high. What was your previous salary? And that what I had done before was my startup. It was not like a small startup I ran from my garage. It was a funded startup with a board paying my salary as the CEO. And they said, oh, but that was your startup, so we can take that salary. Then they said, what was it before that? And I said, I would work for Harcourt Brace and Company, which is a big company. And, I was a director of internet solutions, and this was my salary. And they were like, oh, but that was the dot-com era. And just hit me. Okay, so whatever I say, they want to bring my salary down. And they're going to, find a reason. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to go back below what I was paid so many years back. right? And so I basically said, looks like you can't afford me. So I will, go tell the hiring manager, I will finish up this project and hand over nicely, but, I'll leave.
Yeah.
And so they went back, and then they came back and then gave me the salary I asked. So for me, my low point was that they were not accepting my past experience. And I
Right.
was kind of to keep other things going, to, keep my resume fresh and my learning fresh, to land in the job. And when I ended up getting the job, I realized that they were expecting me to compromise. That was
Yeah.
not that night when I had to walk away and not know whether they'll call me back for the job was bad. And I
Yeah.
love the team, people, right? And I was thinking, I have certain values. I might be doing this just, for myself, but what kind of role model am I creating for my own kid? If I
Yeah.
took a mommy break and because of that, and I'm going to be resentful of that, that
Yeah.
process is not okay.
Yeah.
And so I did that. But what happened was that helped me think about other women who might not have the luxury of walking away like I did, or
Yes.
not have the guts to talk back like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I mentor a lot of women on, careers and pivots and salaries and coming back to industry, coming back from different places into US, and lots of different people like in transition, right? That kind of became my sweet
Yeah.
spot. So I think I kind of channelized that frustration I had
Yes.
into my learning and positivity.
So there's a couple of things that to take away from here, right? I like that you were in that period trying to figure out your next step. And you said, hey, organize meetups. Again, found something that you wanted to learn about. So, and you organized meetups, kept that as a way to, I guess, maybe keep your mind busy while you said inside as well,
Yeah,
you were
it's
still kind of
intellectual
questioning.
stimulation. Yeah.
Yeah, you're still kind of questioning. You got to do the project at PayPal. And I think this whole salary negotiation piece, right? People tend to shy away from, right? And
Yeah.
I think this is men, women, everyone. It's not a subject everyone really loves to talk about. Oh, what am I
Yeah.
worth? And this is how much I think I should be paid. So great for just leaning into that conversation and standing your ground. I think that that's a great message to put out there and make companies think as well, right? It's easy to find excuses to devalue the experience, maybe because it's not the exact experience that they're seeking. But I mean, I think it's great for you to just not question yourself on that,
Yeah.
but stand your ground. It's a really good lesson, something that all of
So
us
I
should
want
do
to add
more.
one more thing. And this has become like a life lesson for me, because after I became independent and I do some consulting work and I will
Yeah.
charge an hourly rate, right? So now when I'm doing autonomous vehicles, then, there are not enough people out there who talk about autonomous vehicle and a business dimension. So I'm kind of sought. Now when I'm doing Gen AI, there are several people doing Gen AI, but I bring a different dimension of Gen AI because I teach it with no code for a variety of audience. And so when people ask you what is the rate, like you said, people tend to shy away from that, right?
Yeah.
I realize that if I don't value myself, nobody's going to value me. So if
Yeah.
I don't set a price for myself, they're not going to think I'm valuable at all, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember the first time I was called to speak at some keynote at a conference from Europe. And they called me, this committee had shortlisted 3 people and they were going to pick one of us to be the keynote. And it's a big conference. I ended up keynoting there. So they said, oh, they checked me out, talked to me, whatever, right? And then at the end, I said, just so you know, I charge a speaker fee. And they were like, oh my God, this was a paid conference. They were
Yeah.
making money off me, right?
Yes.
And they said, we don't, the other 2 speakers that we have shortlisted are not going to charge any fee.
Yeah.
And you're the only one who's going to charge a fee. So they were using that to push me down
Yeah.
and say that I should be free. I should be charging no fee, right? I said, maybe then you should go with the other 2 speakers, right? One of the other 2 speakers. And then they said, okay, we'll go talk to our committee and we'll come back. Thank you, blah, 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 right? And I said, this is not personal. I'm sure I will work with you in future.
Yeah.
After I kept the phone, I was shaking. I was so calm. I was so calm because
Yeah.
in our head, we think asking for money for ourselves or playing hardball is not a female trait,
Hmm.
and we are considered to be bossy or arrogant.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
am not a shy person, but this message is
Yeah.
in my head somewhere, right? So I was shaking. And then I was like, no, I did the right thing.
Yes.
I would not respect myself to cover down and go do this for free. And
Yeah.
I have spoken in several universities and several other places where I have not charged a fee
Yes. Yeah.
because I felt that was the right thing, but it is on my own terms.
Yes. Yes.
But when I go speak at a conference, when I actually speak to groups of, visiting people, MBA consortiums that comes to Silicon Valley, I charge them a fee and I know what my rate is. And, I kind of test my market rate, and now I've kind of upped it to
Yes,
have
yeah,
several rounds from there.
yeah,
But the first time I had to do this, and they did come back to me. They did give me my speaking fee. But if I had not asked, I would not
exactly,
have gone. Yeah.
exactly. Oh, that's great. I'm taking a lot away from this. And you said that we don't ask for it, but we have to remember that there's other people who would ask for it without
Yeah.
even skipping a beat, right? And
Yeah.
again, you respect it when people know what their value is and ask for it.
Yeah.
I just love it. So you talked a little bit about mentoring other women. What is it that some of us as well should be thinking of doing to support one another?
So when I was in my corporate job, I used to be part of this women in tech group that was run by amazing, amazing group of women. I was not the main person in there. I was one of the people in women in tech in eBay, and they ran mentoring sessions. They had all kinds of activities. I have hosted girls who code at eBay to bring girls into coding
Yeah.
as one of the first programs, one of the first few companies that supported the program. And I realized, like, these are all operational experience. I have the capability. So I was heading analytics, right? And I built an analytics org. I was supporting business leaders to do certain, that was my job. And I had a team and I was mentoring my team. But outside of that, I had this energy to get into nitty-gritty details and run events and operationally do things. So I used to do a bunch of that, right? And it was women-oriented events that I've done inside the company. And then I realized that when I got out, and one of the role models I have in there is Roxy Stimson. Me and Roxy were at some event, and we realized that there are not enough women speakers. We were only two women in there. And it got us thinking about this, or what we could do to bring more women into, not just bring more women into speaking. So one of the very tactical thing I do is, if somebody calls me to speak or gives me a job opportunity, anything that comes my way, I will find another person to benefit from it. I don't limit it to women, but if it's a speaking up, I will try to find another woman,
Yeah.
because there are less women in the thing. But if it's any job or anything, I won't limit only to women, right?
Yeah.
I'll go to any of my students and I'll say, okay, who's the right person for this job? So that is one that I'm constantly, because I'm a very extroverted person and very networked, I constantly keep getting pings from people about different jobs, come and write an article for us, come do this for us. And, this is a paid opportunity, do this, but it's not in my keynote range. Then I
Right.
would still send it to somebody else. And I would go mentor them and say, don't ask less.
Yes, yeah.
This is what they're offering me, and this is what you should do. And then, I'm kind of doing that, right? I constantly do this on a daily basis. So April 9th is called IoT Day. That is a global phenomena that has nothing to do with me specifically. It was started by the IoT Council. I'm a member of IoT Council. It's like a think tank. And what happened was, I was invited to speak, and they run events around the clock on IoT Day everywhere in the world. So I used to run IoT Day with multiple speakers, not just men or women, anybody, right? And then what happened was, one year, I think it was in 2019, if I remember right, because this was before COVID, either 2018 or 2019. They invited me and said, come speak somewhere in Eastern Europe, and there was no women in the entire event. And I was like, how is this possible? So I talked to this friend, and very well-respected person that I had a good connection with. And he said, I could not find a single woman, and maybe women are not in industrial IoT. And it was like, that's not true. So I went and found this whole bunch of events, organizations that are in the industrial IoT space. There's women in machine learning, and women in IoT, women in industrial IoT, and women in blockchain. And that night I was very upset. How is this possible that we could not find a single speaker?
Right.
And so I wrote a blog post in Automated Buildings, where I write guest posts about how women are self-organizing, and these are all the different lists. So if you're looking for speakers, go find this. And still I thought, this has a certain audience and it'll go there. But what about the broader world? And what am I doing, right? And I'm called because I'm connected to all these guys, right?
Right.
So I went to this friend and said, if you ask everybody who you have signed up as a speaker to just give one woman that they respect, either an author or a colleague or somebody they respect in the field, you would have got 50% parity, right? So I created a hashtag he for she, and put out a post. And I said, this next IoT day is going to be called IoTWomen, and I'm going to organize this 24-hour only women speaker. And the reason I did 24-hour is because I sit in Silicon Valley and I have a time zone when it is my normal daytime.
Right.
But if I am going to go only into my network, I'm going to again get only a select set of women.
Right.
So I wanted to create role models for all women from around all time zones. That's the aspiration.
Right.
So at 9 a.m. in every time zone, we had a women speaker session go live. We put a call out, and that time we said men nominate women, right? And so some men nominated, great. And I've had amazing colleagues in my and students and stuff who work with me, right? Who are men, who are normal, decent people, right? And so I got a lot of nominations. Some women said, why should we wait for a guy to nominate us? Okay, makes sense. Nominate yourself.
Yeah.
And so we created a whole volunteer organization. So Roxy Simpson and I do this. Roxy Simpson is an executive in F5, very, very senior executive, but she takes time, that time of the year comes on that day. And we run this 24 hours. And now I have a whole bunch of other volunteers and regulars. In fact, I have Paria Sarin, who was a high schooler at that time, who came into volunteer and said, we need to have a website. We need to create this flow, and we need to communicate what is happening. And, all this, right? We had a bunch of people who came in. Paria is now in college, and she's continuing to work with us on that. And it's taken a life of its own. That's a whole community. And then what happens is each year we find new women. Some women might come back, but mostly we try to find at least 50% new women, new speakers who have not done this before. And so a lot of time is spent on explaining to them what this is and how they could participate. And the shocking thing is, bulk of our time is spent when explaining to women. A lot of them say they feel like they are not the best in the field, or they cannot brag. So I don't want to just find people who are already speakers, who already have wisdom. I want to find that woman who's competent, who's capable of speaking, has something to teach, can become a role model for somebody who looks like her, or from a region, or speaks like her, or something, right? But that person might push back. And I've actually sent a bunch of my male colleagues who do this every year with me and say, I cannot believe this person is amazing, but she would not take this offer. I would have jumped at it and taken. I don't understand. I've had also the various different reasons that people give, but I feel like even by inviting them, we've opened up to their potential, that somebody international is calling them. If they didn't take that feedback that time, they might think about it later and say, I'm worth it. I need to be assertive next time. So we end up with 24 women in 24 hours. That's kind of our goal. And we do this, I think this is our 5th year, I think. And we live stream it. It's on our YouTube. We don't charge money for it. And, labor of love. And then through the year, when I'm getting other opportunities, I'm like, I could call this person, and I could call this person, and I'm learning so much from them. It's such a gift, because it looks like so much work, but they're coming and smartening me up. And then there's like a whole community of IoT women. I can go, I know Jessica Groupman is amazing on privacy, and I need to bring her in, for this other opportunity somebody is asking me about. Or Pamela Gupta is the cybersecurity expert. Let me just call her. And so it's like a endless talent pool I have at my disposal, and I just have to kind of send referrals to them.
I think that's great. And I think the point that you made about, there's many women, it happens to me when I reach out for the podcast as well. There's women who will say, oh, I don't think I have much of a story to share. I don't know if somebody can learn something from me. And it amazes me as to, how to give this person a shake and say, no, look at where you've got to. And I know there's still a long road ahead, but look at where you've got to. There's always something that somebody can learn. So I'm surprised that you find the same response as well.
I think it is published research that women do not say me and raise their hand unless they, according to their judgment, are 100% at whatever they think they should be. And men, when they are at 60%, would say yes. So that means they get in to do projects and opportunities. But I also tell people that person who had 60% knowledge took the job. So by the time you wake up to it, that person is smarter than you, not because that 60% has become 100% on the hands-on experience. They would have made some mistakes, or they would have smartened up on the job, but they become smarter than you.
That's right. That's right. Because they're already having those months or years more of time. I'm really enjoying learning about you and your vast experience. I have a fun question that I end with every guest. If you were to write a book or you have a song, what would your theme or title be that captures your journey so far?
So I think if it is going to be a memoir about my life and what I can teach people, I would call it limitless, because I think I don't like people feeling limited
Yeah,
on any sense. And I feel like very smart people who are my students from various industries who are so brilliant in their jobs, when they go and they want to get into autonomous vehicles, they'll say, but I've not come from automotive industry.
right.
Or if they are, on the business side, but they'll say, I don't know Python, I don't do coding. And so they always have something. We all have, or people are
Yeah,
coming into US and they are coming from a different industry, or they're saying, I'm not from this place, I'm not from that place, or
yeah,
whatever else. They have some limiting beliefs that has been put to us. I think as children, we don't have that. And the minute you get out of that belief, like it's nothing is impossible, there is nothing limiting us, it's a very joyful place. Because after I started off on my own as an author, and became a professor, and then I have like many more opportunities to
yeah,
teach and many more opportunities to go do more things, right? I'm trying to make my work more impactful, not
yeah.
just teach
Mhm.
10 places or write more books, right? I want to create more impact from what I'm doing. So one of my really recent projects is a grant-based project to teach a set of girls in South Sudan, and they speak a language called Bari. These girls speak English. The uneducated, mostly women population speaks Bari, which is their local language, but they don't have enough books on Bari to train AI. So AI is not, the big tech has not included Bari language. So we're teaching these girls about LLM and AI so that they could build machine translation for Bari language, and to help women who are in refugee camp understand UN pamphlets to get benefit from that. So that's one of my impact projects. But it goes back to the theme of there is no limit. They say, oh, we don't have enough of their language data,
Yeah.
so we cannot include that, is what somebody has decided not to include them. Right. And I have one of my students called Aishatu Godabe, who is a peace technologist. And she's my role model on this, because she came into my AI class and she said, I want to bring Hausa language into AI. At that time, Hausa was not included.
Okay.
And eventually, Google and everybody started including Hausa. So that woke me up to what are the languages which are left behind. And there's
Right.
7,039 languages or some number close to that out in the world. And only 200 of these languages are included in that. So this common theme of everything I'm doing could play out to be called as inclusion, but my personal motivation in creating mentors, in educating variety of different roles, in every project that I'm trying to create for impact, is to make people feel they're limitless. So I would call my memoir as limitless.
Love it. Totally. It totally syncs with unlimited seating as well. So I'm very
Yes, yes,
I
yes,
love
yes.
it.
Yes.
Really good. So that I really enjoyed getting to know a bit and being able to share some of your experience and your wisdom with the broader community here. Thank you so much again for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for staying with us for another episode of Unlimited Seating. Unlimited Seating is available on all major podcast directories, and you can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Please do share your feedback. Alternatively, you can subscribe to us at www.unlimitedseating.com and get notified when new episodes are published.